So this week in the Sacred Gathering, we're again going to have what we used to call table discussions or maybe just open conversations. The only difference being from the way we normally do it is instead of kind of me preparing a section, is I've just basically grabbed some quotes I find that are interesting from either scripture or from other writers, asked some questions, and we'll just kind of see how people want to wrestle with the ideas in these quotes rather than using the scripture as kind of a launching point in curating discussion. The quotes I wanted to look at this time are a writer that I respect a lot, kind of wrestling with the imagery of being salt and light to the world that show up in Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Now, the writer that we'll be looking at and quoting is Eberhard Arnold. If you're not familiar with him, he was a young intellectual who was growing up around the same time that the Nazi Party was rising in Germany. He did not like or think that they represented Christianity very well, despite the fact that they often made a lot of overtures to the churches at the time. And so groups like the Confessing Church and famous people like Dietrich Bonhoeffer are well known for kind of their resistance to the Nazi regime based on Christian principles. Eberhard Arnold and his family took a kind of a different tact, whereas they chose to take some close family and friends and basically withdraw from society in the direction it was heading as kind of a prophetic statement against them, and to write and to cultivate kind of a communal life and their inner life with God. And so they moved out to the countryside and tried to start kind of a communal farm and live out there. And yet the Nazi Party recognized that this was a strong critique of what they're doing, and recognized that this was subversive and dangerous because they were eventually persecuted. Arnold himself had to hide a lot of his writings. If I remember correctly, he buried them in a trunk on that farm, and they all had to move to South America to avoid official government persecution for their critique of Nazism in Germany at the time. And so I thought anybody who is going to raise that kind of ire of Nazi Germany is someone whose thinking is certainly worth our attention at some point. And so this movement that they started has continued to the current day in these and continued places of community live-in for the sake of Christian discipleship called the Bruderhof or Bruderhof communities. So these communities they started still exist, people still largely making a similar critique against society. So, as usual, I'll read a few kind of these questions and quotes, but I think the real discussion, of course, is going to happen with all of you on Sunday. So let me start with just this kind of reflection question. What was the point of the Christian life in the communities you grew up in? Or maybe what was considered success in life if you didn't grow up in the church? How would you define success in the Christian life now? In what ways has this ideal changed? And in what ways is it the same? So our first quote from Eberhard Arnold comes from a work called The Inner Land. The real task is to take hold of life vigorously and to master it. Our aim is not theoretical discussion, but something much more important, witnessing to an inner energy, an inner surge for practical expression, for work that is vital and has visible results. Then it will become clear that a soul filled with the spirit of love cannot get stuck in individualism, which is the starting point, let alone in the private sphere of subjectivism. Most of all, it is important that we experience the power of God in our inner being, because only then can we be made capable of standing firm and holding out in the storms to come. Only when our inner life is anchored in God can we gain the strength to take up the enormous tasks of the immediate future with the courage of faith. When unity and clarity bring order to our innermost being, then and only then can our life attain the warming and radiating power of the light on the lampstand. Then, representing the unity and freedom of the city on the hill, it becomes a light for the entire world. So why is it important our inner life is connected to God? How do you personally nurture and grow this connection? What are some practices, experiences you might be interested in trying to nurture this? And why does a rich inner life of God need to be expressed in practical outer life of community and serving others? So from Matthew 5, the section that he's kind of quoting and referring to here, you are the salt of the earth, but if salt loses its saltiness, how does it become salty again? It's good for nothing except to be thrown away and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on top of a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they put it on top of a lampstand, and it shines on all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people, so they can see the good things you do and praise your Father who is in heaven. So, what do these images of being salt and light mean to you? Why is a rich interconnection with God necessary for a lifestyle of being salt and light? And how is this different than simply projecting an image of being a good Christian and pretending to be something that we actually aren't? And so a quote from Arnold's Why We Live in Community. All individual fellowships, households, communities, or settlements are, if spiritually alive, simply autonomous cells of one great organism. On a smaller scale, individual families and persons are autonomous cells within the group of which they form a part. The autonomy of these individual cells consists in the specific way that each of them lives for the whole. The life of each cell builds up the community of cells to which it belongs. Life in community means discipline in community, education in community, continual training for the discipleship of Christ. Yet the mystery of the church is something different than this, something greater. It is God's life, and coming from Him, it penetrates the discipline of community. This penetration of the divine into the human occurs whenever the tension of desperate yearning produces an openness and a readiness in which God alone may act and speak. So why is this rich inner life necessary for living in community, especially Christian community? Why does the church need to be more than only a church service on Sunday morning? How might you be God's life in the world? How might your family unit, whatever it looks like, enter this calling? How should this community communicate God's life to each other and to the world around us? So I look forward to the conversation of talking about what it looks like to nurture this inner life with God and how that affects our full communal life as we are trying to be salt and light in our culture.